Welcome to the Bard's Tale Diaries, a series where we relive the Bard's Tale on the Commodore 64 the way it was meant to be played, mapping dungeons, jotting down clues, and making plenty of questionable decisions. And as I work my way towards defeating Mangar, I'll dip into the game's rich history and take time to appreciate the graphics, systems, and design choices that help make it such an iconic classic. Tales of the Unknown, The Bard's Tale, was released at the end of 1985, and it ended up becoming one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had. It felt about as close as a computer game could get to emulating the feel of Dungeons & Dragons, and I was all over it. So when I started thinking about a role-playing game to cover for the channel, this was the first one that leapt to mind, and I couldn't wait to jump back in, for the first time in 40 years. And I wanted to play it the way I did back then, which means starting from scratch with level 1 characters. Will I lose some? Absolutely. Will I spend too much time poring over the manual, taking notes and drawing maps? You bet. Will I get all the way to the end and defeat Mangar? I sure hope so. And here we go. Right off the bat, the intro is gold. I'd forgotten how good the animation is, and how much atmosphere they pack in. While the bard tells his tale, see what I did there? Let's cover the backstory. Skara Brae is in trouble. The evil wizard Mangar has captured the city and has frozen the surrounding countryside, cutting off any chance of escape or outside help. Naturally, a ragtag group of adventurers has stepped up to stop him. That's us. That's about it. But honestly, it's all I need. I already don't like this Mangar guy, and that's plenty of motivation to get started. To be honest, I always thought it was a little odd that there wasn't any actual music in the intro. It's still really cool though. I wanted to do this old school, and well, this is old school. Before we can even properly get started, we need to make a copy of the character disc. And if you've never done this before, just know that it takes its time. I've been sitting here swapping discs for a few minutes now, and honestly, it feels like it's just starting. There's a good reason for this though. As you play, the characters on disc and some of the game data itself are constantly being updated. Those changes are permanent. In other words, the game world physically evolves as you progress, which was pretty forward thinking for the time. But the flip side of this, you really want to keep a pristine copy of the character disc around for future playthroughs. Smart design? Absolutely. Fast? Not even a little. Nothing quite says welcome to your exciting new adventure like rushing home with a brand new game, tearing open the box, and then immediately spending the next 15 minutes managing floppy disks. Although who knows, maybe that was the point. Maybe they were just building anticipation. Either way, this is how the Bard's Tale begins. Well, that's over, and finally, here we are at the Adventurers Guild. It's time to set up our party. The manual recommends starting with the A-Team. That's the pre-built party that comes with the game. Characters like El Cid and Brian the Fist start with equipment and are already past level 1, which is great if you want to ease into things. But that's not really what we're doing here. It's way more fun to start from scratch. So, my first party is going to consist of 6 characters. Can anyone tell I was a big Dragonlance fan as a kid? Beyond that, I've also got some characters warming the bench for when things go sideways. First up are some names pulled from a few of my favorite bands of the 80s. And after that, we've got some quality 80s icons from my favorite sports teams. Huge bonus points to anyone who can name all of them. But back to the task at hand, actually creating these characters. The process can be lengthy. There's no point buy system here, no moving stats around. You roll your attributes, look at them, sigh, and then roll again, and again, and again. You get what you get, and if you don't like it, your only option is more re-rolling. I do know that there are character editors out there, but that really doesn't vibe with what we're trying to do here. At the start, you've got 7 races and 8 classes to choose from. Not every race works with every class, and some combinations are clearly better than others. For example, dwarves can't use magic, but they make amazing fighters. There are lots of viable options, but we don't need to deep dive every permutation here. When rolling stats, what we're really hunting for are 17s and 18s in the attributes that matter most. Magic users want high intelligence, fighters want strength and constitution. Anything less, and you're probably heading back to the reroll screen. Once you're finally happy, or just totally worn down, you name your character and then move on to the next one. It's definitely a process. I spend about half an hour on my party. But then, just like that, we're done. And after all that rolling, I think some introductions are in order. Leading things off is Flint, our dwarven warrior from the Dragonlance series. Up next, also from Dragonlance, is Sturm, our valiant human paladin. He's followed by none other than Tanis, our half-orc hunter. And yeah, also from Dragonlance, and yeah, I know he should be half-elf, but I got better stats this way. Moving to the back, we start with Yolo, our human and slightly alcoholic bard, who you might remember from Ultima. Raistlin is our gnome magician, and he also hails from the Dragonlance saga. And last, but certainly not least, we have Gandalf, an elven conjurer from the Lord of the Rings. Certainly a well-balanced group, if not entirely accurate, and historically speaking, it's a group with a very limited life expectancy. With the party set, we're ready to hit the streets, and the Bard's Tale does not go easy on new characters. Aside from having almost no hit points, we're also starting with no equipment and barely any money. None of which seems to matter to the 4 magicians who just jumped us. They weren't interested in letting us run, so I guess this is officially our first fight of the game. And honestly, if you're going to get jumped, 4 magicians is who you want to get jumped by. These guys are terrible. I beat them up barehanded, and they were kind enough to leave behind a halberd, which is an expensive weapon that Sturm will happily equip. So hey, good start. With that out of the way, our first official stop is Garth's equipment shop, which is just a few steps north of the Adventurers Guild. Hi Garth. With so little gold to work with, we need to prioritize gear for the frontline fighters. These are the characters that are going to be taking hits, and if they go down, things get ugly very fast. But even with scrimping, and even with that fancy halberd I got from the magicians, all I can afford are some basic weapons and armor, and I had just barely enough left to buy our bard Yolo a harp. But mostly, we're slumming it right now. No safety net, no good gear, no money, no healing spells. What could go wrong? Having that harp is important, as it lets me play bard songs. Yolo has 6 to choose from, and I chose Wayland's Watch, which lowers damage from anyone we get into a fight with. And he gets to sing 1 song per level before needing to find a bar to quench his thirst, so that's a priority. Exploring Skara Brae generally means wandering each street, visiting taverns and temples, and kicking in the doors to pretty much every building looking for secrets. If I remember correctly, there are a few hidden places in the city that are really important, including the review board, which is where we'll eventually need to go to level up. So finding that is important. And sometimes when you kick in a door, you find something cool, like the game credits. But mostly, it's just exploring and mapping things as I go. And speaking of mapping, the Bard's Tale shipped with a beautiful map of Skara Brae that I'll be consulting often. It shows most of the landmarks and gives me a pretty good sense of where I am. But it's not perfect. For one thing, it doesn't show everything. The review board, for example, isn't on it, and it can be surprisingly hard to pinpoint your exact location. So for that reason, and also just because I like doing it, I'm going to build my own map of the city. This lets me track where I've been and keep all my notes in one place. After a little wandering, this is what my map looks like so far. I don't think Magellan has anything to worry about, but it works for my purposes. So far, we can see the Adventurers Guild marked as number 1 and Garth's as number 2. The entire city fills up a 30 by 30 grid, so this will eventually be packed. Now, I know some of you are wondering why I'm using a very not 1986 spreadsheet instead of good old graph paper. There's a few reasons. First, the maps are much nicer to look at than my extremely poor handwriting. Second, I don't have to worry about spilling coffee on it or suffering a cat-related mishap. Third, I can access it anywhere. And finally, I don't actually own any graph paper. And honestly, the process is exactly the same as doing it by hand, so I think this still counts as playing old school. I've been wandering for a bit now, mapping things out as I go, and I've even had a couple of scraps, beating up some kobolds and a hobbit or two. And yeah, I know, I don't understand why hobbits are bad guys in this either. Maybe Bryan Cranston had something against Tolkien. Regardless, after every fight, I take whatever money I get and rush back to Garth's to buy better armor. Oh, hi Garth. We're basically walking around like pincushions right now. My goal is to get the front three fighters down to a 1 or 2 armor class as soon as possible. Starting out like this also means frequent trips back to the Adventurers Guild to reset the clock. I don't want it turning into night when the monsters get really tough, and of course, regular visits to the temple to heal. And when a vicious gang of hobgoblins approaches, run away! Run away! These first couple of hours are all about survival. I need to be picky about the fights I take and hope the ones I do take don't result in anyone getting killed. And sometimes a little good luck helps. I just beat up a couple of kobolds who were kind enough to leave us a suit of scale armor. That goes to Sturm getting his armor class to 6. And with another trip to Garth, hi Garth, we upgraded Sturm even further, getting him down to 2 and Flint to 4. Progress. And amazing, after a little more exploring, I found the review board. I'm nowhere near ready to level up yet, but I'm really glad I found it. And it just happens to be right beside the Sinister Inn. Good thing, because YOLO's pretty thirsty. So, I think we're off to a pretty good start. We survived our first few fights, we're starting to get some decent equipment, and perhaps most admirably, we survived the setup process, copying discs and creating characters. In the next episode, we'll continue exploring Skara Brae, hopefully get the party up a level or 2, and, with a little luck, avoid a total party kill. And then we'll hit the dungeons. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the first episode of the Bard's Tale Diaries. If you did, please consider leaving a like or subscribing. And if you have any memories or helpful tips for the Bard's Tale, I am all ears. Please drop them in the comments. Hope to see you again.